the young faith around to prevent it from being mixed with paganism. What appears to have happened, and you're right to direct me back to that particular point, because this is crucial. There's clearly an influence of pagan philosophy coming in 150 AD. The church fathers are no longer Jews. That's significant. The leadership of the church has passed from Jews, who are Unitarian monotheists, to pagans who actually believed in pagan philosophy before they became Christians. So much so that they even said that Moses was a kind of Platonist. Justin Martyr in the 2nd century was trained as a philosopher. Isn't it rather reasonable, not that I'm happy it happened, but isn't it quite natural in a way that these people would impose their previously learned philosophical system on the Bible? And I think that's what happened.
The doctrine of the Trinity, formally stated, is one God in three persons. God having one essence or being. These are all philosophical terms that have been used, drawn from Greek terminology. Homoousion, which means being or essence, was first officially applied to Jesus in a universal sense at the Council of Nicaea, that Emperor Constantine called in order to have theological unity between the bishops that existed in the Roman Empire. He had agreed to have the bishops come together to discuss this issue, one essence of God existing in three persons, won the day. And as one emperor after another continued to embrace Christianity and grant ecclesiastical and judicial power to the ecclesiastical bodies, it was easier to enforce one point of view. Prior to the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, there was a divided empire with regard to the question of the Trinity, or the oneness of God, for instance, as presented by Arius, who was a Christian priest at the time. But there were people, primarily in the eastern part of Constantine's empire, that were almost exclusively Unitarian in their perspective, or at least they did not believe Jesus to be God.
But I would also be concerned about Constantine's motives. Constantine is known not only for his convening of the council and his attempt to control Christianity, but he's also known as the emperor who gave us Sunday. If Coleman is right, it would seem that what Constantine was trying to do was to create a new cult which would unite Christianity and sun worship. So what Constantine was after, it would seem, was a kind of syncretistic religion in which Christianity had a place, but also sun worship. These were the two most powerful religions in the empire, and Constantine was trying to create a syncretistic cult out of the two.
But bottom line, after the vote was taken and the Trinitarian side won, Constantine supported that decision by banishing or sending into exile the Arian opponents.
Because I think people felt that the truth was revealed there. The truth was finally settled. The truth won out in those two councils. And to prevent further discussion, the emperor then said, this is it. We're not going to divide on this issue anymore. So it really has the backing of a pagan system. The Roman emperors were partly responsible under Constantine at the time of the Nicene Council. He was the one who really adjudicated at that council. Not to say that the bishops were not involved in the argumentation, they were. But at the end of the day, he put his stamp on what was the majority decision. And that has not been challenged, because beyond that time, the Roman Catholic Church was the monolithic sole ecclesiastical body, really, with the Pope as supposedly representing Peter, and he simply continued to reinforce this dogma, this triune dogma. At the time of the Reformation in 1517 AD, the principal reformers, Calvin in Switzerland and Luther in Germany, did not challenge this part of the accepted creed. They challenged many other things in the existing ecclesiastical system, but this doctrine of God as three persons in the one essence was not challenged by those principal reformers.
Well, I think certainly the biggest misconception that Christians have about Jesus is they have confused the Jesus who was built up by the later creeds and by tradition, the Christ that was built up by the creeds and tradition, with the historical figure that lived in Palestine close to about 2,000 years ago. And in doing that, they've acquired a number of pieces of baggage with those misconceptions, many of them which have been kind of departures from what Jesus himself would have thought as a Palestinian Jew, and so forth, and certainly would have departed from his tradition in many ways.
And these historians, looking at that early church history, the 2nd and the 3rd centuries, they know full well there was no standard. They were milling around arguing these things. It was only later that Orthodoxy won the battle and said, now we're the triumphant ones, we're the Orthodox ones, you join us or you'll be on the pale, kind of gang warfare. And the possibility, the very threatening and interesting possibility is this, that what became orthodoxy in those creeds was originally heresy. Can you imagine that the situation standing itself on its head? An original orthodoxy, Jesus' right opinion, the apostolic right opinion, given by the creedal statements of the New Testament, for example, there is one God, the Father, and one mediator between that one God and man, the man, Messiah Jesus, 1 Timothy 2:5.
So, regardless of how a Roman emperor oversaw a period of its development, and regardless of how church councils have treated the issue for hundreds of years, how do modern supporters of the Trinity doctrine defend their faith? Surely they must have good reason to demand that Jesus is God, right? Genesis 1:1 reads, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth." The word for God here is Elohim. Elohim is a word used in the Bible oftentimes to describe powerful people. In Exodus chapter 21, Elohim is used to describe powerful judges, and it is also used to describe angels in Psalm chapter 8.
We have several names. We have Elohim, we have Adonai, we have written here Shaddai. We have the four-letter word, which we don't know exactly how to pronounce, Yahweh, or some people pronounce it Jehovah. And Elohim is one of the names that's used to refer to God. There's a plural ending, but we don't have any. It's used by, this plural ending is used by Christians and others to substantiate their belief that in multiple gods, but Judaism just disregards it.
Elohim is the way that the word is the way the word often appears. It's like a plural which appears in some of our languages. For instance, the word news in our language, we don't say, I'm going to go watch an item of new. It's an item of news. And it's just its usage which tells you whether it's one item of news or multiple items of news. Well, Elohim is similar. The im ending is the plural in the Hebrew, and so there you have a case where context has to determine whether the pronoun, is singular or plural.
Queen Elizabeth II, right now, the reigning monarch of England, uses the phrase "we." She's referring to herself, but all that she represents. But yes, that's one of the explanations as to Elohim, that it was a majestic way of referring to God. Other people don't accept that.
Though Genesis 1 presents a less than persuasive proof text for the Trinity, it remains one of the favorite go-to verses for Trinitarians to defend their faith,